Hello, well today we're going to be busting some of those myths around house burglary, and we'll start our tour of basic home security by looking at some measures that won't cost you a penny. Welcome to Grey Matters on Location. Well, welcome to Grey Matters on Location. Grey Matters is the channel that promotes the fact that the older generation still matters, still has relevance, and also looks at issues that matter to the older generation. Well, later we'll be looking at some measures you can take for home security that won't cost you a penny. But first, let's bust some of those myths about house burglaries. The first one is that most burglaries happen at night. Now, that's not true anymore. It used to be up until the 1970s because there was always someone at home. So the safest time to burgle was at night when everyone's in bed and asleep. But since then, more and more partners have gone to work, and now today it's usually most households that both partners are out working during the day. So the safest time to burgle is during the day when there's no one at home. Now, some dwelling burglaries do still occur at night, probably about 5%, and shed and garage burglaries are normally nighttime too. It's a bit difficult to walk down the road with somebody's lawnmower under your arm in broad daylight, but the majority of burglaries these days happen during the day. So let's look at myth number 2, that burglars case the joints. No, they don't. No, most burglars are opportunist, which means that they just look for the house that looks and feels unoccupied. And it could be a house on a junction, at the end of a town or village, somewhere where escape is going to be easy. But that's not always the case. They will look for the easy pickings. Myth number 3, they must have been watching my house because I only popped out for a few minutes. No. You popped out for a few minutes and you left telltale signs. For a start, the house would have looked and felt unoccupied. And time again, people rush out, maybe to pick the kids up. They're in a hurry, they get the car out the garage. They haven't got time to shut the doors, so they leave a house with the garage doors wide open and no car on the drive. A bit of a dead giveaway. They could have been passing as you backed out the drive and thought they'd give it a try, see if there's anyone else at home. But they don't. It is pure fluke, I promise you, that you get burgled when you've only popped out for a few minutes. Myth number 4, a dog is the only security you need. No. A dog is very good, can be good, particularly if it's big and vicious or if it's small and yappy. A dog that makes a noise is a good deterrent, but it's only one layer of your security. And your security does need to be built up in layers. You can't just rely on one thing to protect your property. You can't just rely on a burglar alarm. You can't just rely on having good locks. You need a layer upon layer of security to achieve that. So yeah, a dog is good. Definitely not the only security you need though. I know burglaries, I know one in particular where there were 2 huge Rottweilers and they were known to be vicious, and they still got burgled. So don't rely on just a dog. Myth number 5. Don't get a burglar alarm because it just alerts the burglars to the fact you've got something worth stealing. Now, that was certainly true up until, I don't know, the early 1980s, because until then, burglar alarms cost an awful lot of money. And when I say a lot of money, you're talking about several months' salary, 2 to 3 months' salary. So it was only the rich people that could afford to buy a burglar alarm. And the technology back then was so shocking that you could just pull an alarm off the wall and throw it in a bucket of water and it would stop. So they weren't really a huge deterrent, and they were very much a signal that there was stuff in the house worth stealing. But nowadays, everybody's got something worth stealing. Everybody's got Xboxes, smartphones, smart TVs, Blu-ray players. Nearly everybody's got some cash and jewellery in the house because you will have acquired it maybe from going on holidays, you may have inherited some. 90% of homes have got something worth stealing. So to have an alarm doesn't now signal that you've got something, it's just saying, go and find somewhere else because I'm looking after my property. Now, to give you a clue on this, there's an estate or a cul-de-sac of newly built houses. They've all got alarms, and one at the very end of the cul-de-sac got burgled. Now, that's very unusual. Burglars don't like going to the bottom of a cul-de-sac to burgle. There's only one way in and one way out, and the escape is limited, and the chance of being seen is quite high. We couldn't work out why until we noticed that the alarm box was around the side of the house. The burglars didn't see it. They thought that was the only house in that close that wasn't alarmed, and they took the chance. So it's worth getting an alarm, and I'll come on in detail on alarms and choosing an installer and the types of alarms you need in another edition of the home security videos. Now, one of the common things I hear is people saying it's pointless having security because if the burglars really want to get in, they will. And that's very true, they will. If you decide not to bother with security because you think, well, they're going to get in anyway, it saves me the damage, I can understand that. But the point is, if you're just relying on physical security to keep them out, then, as I said earlier, one layer of security just isn't enough. You need to build your security up in layers. And that's where we'll be starting with our next video on home security, looking at the first layer, which is the outside of your house. Okay, so we'll do that then. In the meantime, let's look at some things that you can do that won't cost you a penny. Now, you'll recall I said that burglars will look for the place that looks and feels unoccupied, so we need to address that. We also need to take away the curbside appeal of your house to the burglar. Now, we all know about curbside appeal when you're trying to sell your house, but there's also the same thing for a burglar. And the first thing you need to do is open up the view of the front of your house. You need to deprive them of cover, because the first thing they'll do is come at your drive and knock at the door. If there's no one in, straight round the back, they'll break in. Now, if you've got lots of cover at the front of your house, lots of leylandii trees hiding the front door and all the rest of it, then they may well try and break in through the front. But the point is, whatever they do, they'll be undercover. The best thing to do, whatever hedges or fences or trees you have at the front of the house, keep them to 4 feet. Any higher than that and you're providing the burglar with cover. So open up the view. Railings are good because you can see through railings, you can see what's going on the other side. If you have a gate, use it. Put a physical barrier there. Now, this is touching on another myth, in fact. People say if you close your gates, then burglars know you're out. Well, they don't know you're out because they don't know your habits. Remember, they don't case the joints. They don't know if you habitually leave your gates open and only close them when you go on holiday, or if you close them all the time. Get into the habit of keeping them closed. When the burglar drives past, he's already got a physical barrier across your driveway. It's going to make him think. And the point is, the closer a burglar can get to your premises with a vehicle, the more you're going to lose. So if you can stop the vehicles getting on the drive, even better. Now, if you're out, what are the chances you're going to have the lights on during the day? Probably only if the weather turns nasty. But if you're out and the weather turns nasty, there's not much you can do about it. Unless, of course, you've got a smart home where you can turn on lights through your phone. Most people don't. Now, you can put lights on timers, particularly when the nights are drawing in. But during the day, normally people don't have lights on. If you've got low energy light bulbs or LED lights in particular, leave a light on all day in one of the living areas that can be seen from the front of the house, because that will give an impression you're at home. People don't leave lights on and go out. Also, put a radio on. Now, this is an old trick, isn't it? Put a radio on, but put it on a talking station. Alexa, play Radio 4.
Here's BBC Radio 4.
So there are voices in the house. Now, I've actually come home forgetting that I'd left the radio on Radio 4. And as I walked in, I could hear voices, and I knew no one should be at home. And it actually freaked me a little till I realised it was the radio. So it does work. With the nights drawing in, the burglars will extend their working day. They normally burgle office hours, But as the nights draw in, all they need to do is drive down the road, particularly in a commuter belt, and look for the houses that are in darkness, where all the others have been lit up. So leave lights on or put them on timers to come on during those times. I'm a great believer in bluff as well. There's nothing wrong with making up a notice saying security provided by, make up a company's name. CCTV, even covert CCTV in operation if you don't have any cameras. Dummy cameras are okay, but they come with a little battery and a red flashing light. Generally, real cameras don't have little red flashing lights, so don't use the battery, just put the camera up. But CCTV these days is so cheap that you might as well go for the real thing, to be honest. But making up a little notice doesn't cost a penny. Now, if you've got a horse box or loose box in the middle of a field and there's no power, you can still put a notice on. If you use a container for storage, weatherproof a notice and stick it on there, addressed to your staff, even if you don't have any staff. And all it needs to say is, notice to staff, please ensure the alarm is deactivated before entering to avoid the police attending unnecessarily. Now, because it's not addressed to the criminal, they'll believe it. If you put burglars beware, this container is alarmed, they might think, no, it's not, there's no power. So a little bit of bluff, a little bit of psychology can go a long way. And all those things needn't cost you a penny. Okay, so open up your premises, open up the view of your premises so that it can be seen. Use your gates if you've got any. Leave lights on all day if necessary. Leave a radio on, a talking station, and use a bit of bluff. It all helps. Right, well, that's it for now. Thanks for joining us. The next video on home security, we'll be looking at the outside of your property and looking to see how you can deter the burglars visually, and also using physical measures. And throughout this series, I'm obviously very mindful of cost of things. So I'm not going to be recommending hugely expensive measures, and you will get alternatives. So I hope you'll join me for the next one on home security. Till then, from Grey Matters, bye for now.